Welcome to another episode of Growth Leaders by Charge, where we dive deep into the journeys, insights, and strategies of leaders who are shaping the future of work. Today, I'm truly excited to introduce a remarkable guest, a transformative leader with over 3 decades of experience in the corporate world. She has worn many hats: Chief People Officer, Executive Consultant, strategic problem solver, and a true enabler of transformation. Her career has been dedicated to driving impact, unlocking people's potential, and shaping organizations to thrive in times of change. Beyond business, she's also deeply passionate about the future of work, the evolving people agenda, the power of AI, sustainability, and even the creative influence of art. In this conversation, we'll explore her personal journey of growth, her biggest leadership lessons, and the takeaways that every aspiring leader can learn from. So let's dive in and learn from the wisdom, experiences, and vision of a true growth leaders. So, Annabel, most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. I hope I can do justice to this introduction, but I'll try my best.
You have such a rich career. I mean, many years of McKinsey & Company, most likely a hardworking woman in one of the toughest environments. And now you're heading straight into the private equity side, which must be super exciting as a group people officer. I'm going to just jump into because you talk about transformation, and what does a transformative leadership mean to you today and in today's context world?
I think it always meant being curious and being open for change. I think in today's world, it probably is at a higher speed and with more technology and input than you ever had before. But for me, it was always around trying to solve and always improving. And that can be at a high speed, at a low speed, but it's always identifying areas where you can do better and then finding solutions of how to do it better. And for me, as a leader, that means you are curious and you're willing to learn. These are the elements that I think create an environment where you as an individual can be transform yourself, but also help organizations to transform.
Yeah, because in the end, I guess you have, as you say, the curiosity and the drive, but the transformation, does that not really come in the organization? It's the people who needs to transform, or
people have to be open for the change, and that's the tough part, because we all sometimes sort of change is difficult because it means personally doing things differently, testing your own limits, etc. So when you drive change, as I've done in many ways, you need to bring people along and explain why the change. So what's the reason for it? What's in it for them or for the organization or for the better of society? You just need to find the hook that gets people excited about what you're trying to change. And I say, listen, if you don't move forward, you fall behind. And even if it's only 10, 15 years of career ahead of you, you cannot be complacent. You need to change anyway. So let's make it for the better of the organization, society, or ourselves.
You know, when we had our university studies a few years back, then we were talking about leaders and transformation. Do you see the need for transformative leaders? I mean, we have the team leaders, we have the mid management, and of course, then we have the executive management. Because what was one of the key at that time, which I believe it still is, it has to do with the time perspective. So the higher up in the big organization, you have a longer time perspective on how things are than you may have in running projects and teams. You know, they're more time limit, or the transformation of leaders or the transformative leaders. Do you see that in all levels in the organization? And
so you use one word that I always find a bit dangerous in nowadays world is managers. I think no one identify themselves as a manager, because the past is you manage the tasks of your team members and you helped digest the big task into smaller tasks and then gave responsibilities, but you told people what to do. And
Yes.
that is no longer how it works. I think that's why I think even as an individual, you should, if you're an individual contributor, be a leader of yourself. As you become a manager, in parentheses, so you're responsible for others, then lead others. Don't manage others, but lead them and help them find the right solutions. Because no one is capable in today's world to fully foresee all the elements that you need to reflect on when you do change. So you need your entire team to bring in different dimensions of it. And I still am a big fan of that. The more I have the different people around the table, the better the answer is.
But you triggered me a little bit about the leadership and the manager, because I've always had the opportunity to leading organization in different cultures. And not mention all the different countries, but you have a lot of managers in many cultures. What I understand what you're saying, if you're really going to transform an organization, you got to be a leader. Otherwise, it won't happen. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yes, absolutely. And I have worked in different countries as well. As you know, many of the companies I worked in, either the projects or the companies were global. So I know that there are certain roles when we're talking about very administrative roles, etc. But those are becoming less and less important. If you look at the development of AI, if you really just need someone to do A because you asked them to do A can be just as well done by AI or an agent or whatever. So I do think we need to be careful in saying, even when in the culture it is something that we normally rely on, we need to think differently to remain relevant, honestly.
I mean, you're spot on. I fully agree with you. So you spent more than 3 decades navigating the corporate world. What pivotal experiences shaped your journey into becoming a C-suite leader? Could you see back, okay, that happened. That's where I actually learned about that, or how do you?
Which, as we talked about, I mean, Europe is much more cohesive than moving to the Middle East and experiencing what that means. I was lucky I had a soft landing going with McKinsey, so my company that I understood, but then moving out of McKinsey to Majid Al Futtaim, where I suddenly was working in an environment that was very, very different, not only from a perspective of McKinsey or consulting versus non-consulting, but also then culturally, where I was clearly the foreigner and the one who didn't speak Arabic, for example. So having to influence people, and I think that's probably the biggest learning through my career. And for me,
Give me an example from your history where it could be a manager say, "Here, just solve it," or where you really had to step out of your existing shoes.
So every time, but let's use one example, which was when I joined here in Switzerland an insurance company. Actually, it was a big culture shock, and insurance is always a culture shock because we're talking about an organization that by definition is careful of change and slower because they insure, they manage risk. And suddenly having to drive a huge change program and without a team, and understanding how do I now get this organization that knows they want to fix something. And it was just fascinating because I learned how to not tell people what to do, but actually have a conversation about what we want to achieve, and therefore then have a discussion, what should we do? And we all worked like crazy because we wanted to achieve the vision.
Yeah, and I think you're touching something so important, and we see that not at least now in all technology companies, where the creativity, you have to have the freedom to explore and excite, and all that is coming through. So
the thing is, you have to give freedom, but you also need to know when to make a decision. And I think that's sometimes we miss out as leaders. And if you don't make decisions, that's also not helpful.
That is really when we get into the execution in the next step. So what are some of the toughest leadership challenges you have faced, and how did you overcome them?
It's dealing yourself with having a manager as a leader rather than a leader. That was personally because I need freedom. So that was certainly a challenge. Working in environments where I joined, for example, and someone else wanted my role that I came in for, and understanding suddenly this passive aggressiveness, so people not really collaborating, but I always assume good intent, and I think I still fundamentally want to assume good intent, but sometimes you need to also accept when it might not work
Yes.
out and need to make
Mm.
decisions. And those things are for me much harder because I always call myself very naive. I still, and I want to keep my
Mm.
naivety, I would say, but sometimes you need to be a bit harsher. That for me
So
would.
how did you cope with those situations? Because I mean, in the end, it goes into the stomach when you feel that you have the belief that people want to do it because that's the only way to being a leader. But then you see, well, it's not working like that. How did you cope with that?
Not always well. I think the best ways when I coped with was asking for help. So I normally
Uh,
go always to addressing it directly and having the conversation. But if someone is passive aggressive, they don't want to have the conversation. Or if someone tells a different story in the background, you're in a back foot. Yeah. So what you need to do is understand the moment where you need to ask for help.
I think you have a very important point there because I mean, there are a lot of people who actually get into that situation of different reasons. But it's actually daring, taking up and gain a mutual understanding of it. So I think you have a very important message there.
Asking for help, and if something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. It's a bit like this. If something
Mm.
looks like a spade, smells like a spade, it probably is a spade. So you should probably uh, address it. Yeah, and therefore that for me is very important that you are humble enough to know that you do not know the answers and that you make mistakes along the way. And
Yeah. You're now moving into an exciting organization, into private equity. And I presume, without knowing, that there are multiple companies in that group, etc. Uh, and one and it may be different from your perspective than in those organizations. But when they drive transformation, change projects, uh, where does the learning and development and training actually come in as a support product into this change? What's your view of, I mean, the function of learning and development and the impact for leadership? Have a lot of now, it's a lot of AI training and so on. How do you see it? Is it an important aspect for organizations today, or not,
I
to
would be
start with?
completely remiss if I said it wasn't an important session. And it's just maybe what you're learning changes. So even 8 years ago, when I was at Majid Al Futtaim, it was all around getting the skill set up. I think it's much more mindset now because skill set is so easy to get. If I have a problem with anything, I ask Perplexity or ChatGPT, or I ask someone and I get the answers quite quickly. So technical, you still need to train on certain things and it's good to have a baseline, but I would leave that very much to the portfolio companies to know what skills they really,
Mm,
hard skills they need. And I hate the word soft skills, so I'm saying human skills and technical skills.
mm,
Yeah. So technical
mm,
skills, I think, are often for me very specific to the role and the portfolio company. So the succession planning and the talent management. How do we make sure we have the most important roles covered by the most, so that we really help people to develop and grow, and learning, as you and I probably are clear
mm,
defenders, is not from a course that you do, but 80% of the learning happens on the job, and therefore it's about opportunities you create for people. But when I think about classic learning, as you would offer in
mm,
other companies, I focus much more on what are leadership and mindset trainings, and so things around curiosity, giving feedback, receiving feedback, communication, storytelling, all of these things that actually will help us to collectively move to the next level and brings out the talent in below or next to us and around us,
mm,
and allows us to drive change, remain curious, and that's not easy. It's really much more about helping people remain human, having curiosity about themselves and about what the organizations need. And then there's some skills, as we talked, AI, you need to have a minimum understanding of what it means. So whenever something completely new comes, I think we need to bring people to a minimum level, and then some will go deeper and some just use it.
Yeah. So what we have seen, I don't know if you support that, but we see a lot of the new generation coming out to the market. They are normally rather tech savvy, many of them, but may lack the human skills, the people interaction, the influence and skills, the communication skills, and so on. How to use your EI, emotional intelligence, in the interaction with people, and so on. Is that something you have realized, or maybe that's just a saying
Them so sometimes,
potentially? Mm,
yeah, potentially. Some clearly
mm,
are. I mean, don't get me wrong, but just because you grew up with it doesn't make you savvy about it. It just you know how to use it, but you might not be questioning enough. So what I really worry about is actually people becoming complacent and using AI instead of using their brain. And I think for the younger generations, I wouldn't work on how to use technology, but more how to use technology. So not the technical usage, but the mindset usage. Whereas in the
mm,
older generations, it's how to actually use it, if you know what I'm
yeah.
trying to say. So it's the same word, but a very different meaning.
So the way we are thinking here is that take what we then can call soft skills or human skills in the sense, but take change management. I see the communication skills. I see the EI, and I mean we teach those through formal training online with peer-to-peer group discussions and so on. But what we're doing right now is actually adding a module everywhere to these is okay, where does AI come into this and how can that support me in the change management projects? Because I still need to understand how to drive and motivate and follow up a change management project. But okay, utilizing that support on top give you a power strength. And that comes very much into what we call the soft skills as such.
So I fully agree that this is core for our generation and maybe 35, 40 upwards. I think in the
Yeah,
younger generation, you actually don't need to add it, but actually add the other
I
things
see.
around it. So I think it's for me, it's
Yeah.
where this shift happens because
Mm,
if I look at my kids, they are AI first in their mind. I mean, when we have a problem or a question,
mm,
and I always say, don't ask it, what's the answer to this question? Say, this is the question I've been faced with. This is how I'm thinking about it. How can I use this and this and help me? Am I going in the right direction? And build on this. I
mm,
always ask them and myself to go in with the first answer and then use AI as an exchange mechanism that builds on what I have and not
yeah.
start, because if it starts with a first order answer, then it's much harder to get to the second order. And therefore, I think the training you need to do for our generation is a different one to get us open to using it and
Mm,
not consider it cheating if we use it and actually be open about it and so on. Whereas in the next generation, I think what you have to do is focus much more on the soft skills and because the other skills are there already, and rather than say, how do
mm.
you bring this together with what you do anyway?
I think that's a good summary of that, and it's interesting, as you say. The main focus on younger is, working with how to work with these things because they're going to pick up the best practices anyhow through AI, and the older generation need to understand how to actually use that into what they already know. You are interested in art.
Yes.
Maybe you would tell a little bit about what kind of art, and does that have an influence into your role as a leader or not?
I would
And if so, yes, how? Why?
so I love art in all its form. For me, art is creative. It's often a story that has to be told by someone who uses the expression of be it photography, paper, whatever, and brings out something. But when I face or look at art, it's less about looking at whether something is beautiful, but rather whether something tells a story and has a meaning and what the meaning is. So why do I say that that shapes me, it's in many ways. One is an understanding that I am an appreciation of skills that I've always had that people have that I do not have. And I think that will always shape how I think in teams, that I know that there's people, and I like to surround myself with people who are different than me. And I know that there are people who have much better skills in certain things, and I can appreciate those skills. So I think in that way already, just fundamentally how I think about working with others, it has shaped me. The other way it has shaped me is that art is often an expression of deep-rooted topics that have meaning. And knowing how to get to meaning is very interesting when when you want to do change. So, and the meaning can be different for me than you. So you and I can look at the same piece of art and you think about it in the context of, I don't know, be it your history in Scandinavia, and I will look at it from a feminist point of view. And same piece of work, same thing, has completely different stories for you than me. I a lot with conceptual art as well. Sometimes just words that trigger me, and sometimes those arts are very important for me in a period of time, and sometimes not. I have one painting in my bedroom, and I'll just because that one is for me one of my core quotes is on that painting. There's words that you can hardly read, but one sentence is, "I do not want to judge them," which is interesting for a head of people because one of my jobs is to judge, but I still always want to remain curious. And that sentence is the one I wake up with in the morning, and that reminds me that you need to remain curious because judgment is too easy and it's often wrong.
We were at the Guggenheim Museum right now, recently in Bilbao, and it's so interesting because sometimes you're just caught by it, and and then sometimes you can go in there. I don't understand because you are not on that level in the thinking. It really is. Now, I'm going to have some rapid fire questions to you, and I'll see if you can pick them on the mind. It's a good. Is there a book that changed your perspective? And it could be life, it could be in the business. That's the one.
I've had several books and they always were in a period. So I think one of the first one might have been The Unbearable Lightness of Being. That was when I was a teenager or older teenager, or the Auster books. Paul Auster was an writer that really impressed me because it was a bit obscure and at the same time there was always reason behind it and curiosity. Or The Player from Dostoevsky. So there's books have always influenced me. Not a very rapid fire answer, but and each gives you something.
The best leadership advice you ever received in one line.
I'm not looking for the sharpest tool in the box, but the most interesting.
Good. A mistake you made as a leader that became a big learning.
Thinking that it's about having the right answer rather than the right question.
And if you would have a coffee meeting with a historical leader or innovator, who would it be?
That's a good question because I honestly, there's people that I really hate and I would like to meet because of that. Someone like, well, hate, strong word, but Musk, because I think you would learn something. But I'm not sure I would really actually enjoy any minute of it. And then there is people that I just like Gates, who I find fascinating, how he reflected about how him and his wife changed how they think about success. So there's many people I would like to meet. Some because I want to learn from them, and maybe also because what they did, and maybe because of what they shouldn't have.
No, that's very good ones, all of them. Annabel, we are coming to an end, and I would like to thank you for your great participation. It's lovely having you on board, and I'm going to wish you all the best in your new role and exciting future ahead. Thank you so much.